You see, the curious thing about happiness is that the more desperately you clutch at it, the more it squirms like a bar of soap in the bath, slipping from your grip precisely because you squeeze so hard. And so, here you are, racing after smiles, promotions, likes, and lovers, as though they were bright balloons bobbing above a carnival, only to find that every time you leap up to snatch one, the string is just a fingertip out of reach. Now, some people will tell you try harder, but that only means leaping higher in increasingly uncomfortable shoes. I propose something altogether different. Stop leaping and notice that all those balloons are reflections, mirages dancing on a hot road, made of the same mind that's doing the looking. Think of the modern pursuit of happiness as a dog biting its own tail. The faster the dog spins, the more certain he becomes that the tail is an external prize, an object to possess, rather than an extension of himself. You too have been hypnotized by an image of paradise somewhere up ahead, an Amazon Prime-delivered bliss that arrives tomorrow if you place the order today. And when tomorrow comes and paradise hasn't arrived, you blame the courier, the government, your parents, the weather, perhaps even the algorithm. Anything except the simple fact that paradise was never in the parcel to begin with. You cannot Amazon your way to enlightenment. Let's pause, breathe, and ask, what is this phantom called happiness you're chasing? Most of you imagine it as a permanent condition, a kind of psychological climate control that keeps the inner temperature at precisely 22 degrees Celsius, neither too hot with desire nor too cold with despair. That's a misunderstanding. Happiness is not a climate, it is at best the weather, passing, unpredictable, a dance of shining suns and drenching storms. To demand constant sunshine is to resent the miracle of the rainbow. Now, if I tell you that chasing happiness makes you miserable, I must also tell you why. First, the chase sets up a duality. Here am I, over there is happiness, and between us exists distance. The very act of seeking implies lack. The declaration I must find happiness is simultaneously a confession. I am not happy. So you begin from a position of deficiency, and that deficiency becomes the lens through which you see the world, as a thirsty man sees everywhere the absence of water. The irony is that thirst pushes him through scorching deserts where water is ever harder to find. Second, the chase turns life into a means to an end. You stop drinking tea for the taste of tea and begin drinking it for the promise of tranquility. You stop walking for the pleasure of movement and walk for calorie counts. Relationships become networking, conversations become branding, meditation becomes performance, and even sleep becomes an optimization hack. Each moment is no longer a jewel in its own right, but a mere stepping stone toward some future moment that is supposed to glow brighter. And thus you bulldoze through the only life you ever have, this moment, because you believe the next one will redeem it. Third, the chase trains your nervous system to anticipate rather than experience. Dopamine spikes at the thought of a future reward, so you live forever on the verge of arrival, but never arrive. Like the donkey chasing a carrot tied to its own harness, you keep thinking, just one more promotion, one more follower, one more heartfelt compliment. But the horizon recedes, and your life becomes a constant stretch of almost there, a tension that never resolves into the chord. All right, how does one awaken from this treadmill dream? The first step is to see that happiness, when it does arise, is not something produced by acquisition. It is a side effect of alignment. Consider music. The delight of a melody lies not at the final note but in the whole flowing pattern. Were a symphony merely a race to the last chord, the fastest orchestra would be best. We would pay maestros to slam out endings and go home, but we savor the weaving of sound through time. Life is precisely such a symphony. The function of each moment is to be this moment, not a stepping stone to the finale. But Alan, you may protest, shouldn't we have goals? Ambitions? Dreams? Indeed, goals are delightful playthings, like kites lofted into the sky. The trouble begins when you imagine that the kite string is attached to your heart, that if the kite crashes, your heart crashes too. Hold your goals lightly, the way you'd hold a butterfly, gently enough that it may rest on your finger, loosely enough that it may fly away without tearing its wings, or your pride. You might ask, where does this leave motivation? If I stop chasing happiness, won't I become lazy? A couch-dwelling sloth? Not at all. Ceasing the chase doesn't smother vitality, it redirects it from compulsive striving to spontaneous activity. Imagine a child building a sandcastle. She heaps wet sand upon wet sand, decorating with shells, carving turrets, utterly absorbed. Yet she knows the tide will swallow every grain by nightfall. Does that certainty paralyze her? No, it frees her to play wholeheartedly, because the point is the playing, not the permanence. Now let us examine another angle, the marketplace of self-improvement. You've been sold a notion that happiness is a skill you can master if only you buy the right course, read the right book, repeat the right affirmation. This is like believing you can capture a breeze in a jar, then blame the jar manufacturer when you open it and find stale air. There is no technique that guarantees a permanent high tide of joy, because joy is not a substance but an event, like laughter. You cannot laugh continuously, the diaphragm must rest. Yet you don't lament the pauses between laughs, do you? You allow the rhythm. Similarly, happiness arises in pulses, waves, seasons. A flower blooms, fades, sets seed. The blooming is exquisite precisely because it is fleeting. If roses never withered, we would stroll past them unmoved. Your transient joys are fragrant for the same reason. Let me offer a parable. A monk once asked his teacher, "How may I be free of sorrow?" The teacher pointed to a bamboo grove rustling in the wind and said, "Listen." The monk listened and heard nothing but bamboo. The teacher smiled. There is no sorrow in pure listening, yet the moment you ask, "How can I keep this forever?" sorrow begins anew. In other words, attempting to possess the rustle destroys the rustle. This leads us to the central koan. Can you be content without clinging to contentment? Can you allow happiness to visit like a butterfly, land on your shoulder and fly off again without chasing it into the thorns? If so, you will discover a deeper rhythm, the contentment of non-contention, the joy of not needing joy. Observe your own life. Moments of genuine delight usually ambushed you when you weren't plotting, weren't guarding, weren't measuring. Perhaps you were giggling with a friend over nonsense, or standing under a sudden rain shower, or absorbed in a piece of music so completely that the listener and the melody were one. In each case, self-conscious pursuit was absent. You didn't manufacture these moments, you slipped into them as one slips into a warm bath. That should tell you something vital. Happiness is a byproduct of unguarded living. The problem is that society has institutionalized the chase. Advertisements whisper that you're incomplete until you buy the cologne, download the app, achieve the body mass index of a Renaissance marble statue. Social media serves up highlight reels that imply everyone else is riding a perpetual Ferris wheel of sunsets and six-pack abs. Then you measure your backstage against their red carpet, feel deficient, and double your efforts to chase. But remember, a peacock does not envy a swan, and a swan does not envy a peacock. Each revels in its particular grace. You, likewise, are a unique swirl of cosmic paint. Envy is comparing brushstrokes in different paintings. Let's get practical. Suppose you wake up tomorrow morning and decide to experiment with not chasing happiness. Begin with attention. When you sip your coffee, notice the aroma, the warmth against your lips, the bittersweet dance on the tongue. That experience is complete. There is nothing to add. When you walk to work, feel the texture of pavement under shoes, the rhythm of footsteps, the city's symphony of horns and voices. Again, complete. You see, the present moment is self-justifying. It does not require future improvement to be worthy. Your task is not to improve the moment, but to improve attention to the moment. Do that, and the moment improves itself. But what about pain, you ask? Pain, too, is part of the weather. When sadness blows through, treat it as you would treat the wind rattling your window. You don't shout at the wind. You observe its howl. Maybe light a candle and watch the flame flicker. In observing pain without resistance, something alchemical happens. Suffering, the psychological overlay of "I don't want this," melts, and what remains is pure sensation, sometimes intense yet strangely workable. Happiness, then, is not the absence of pain, but the presence of an unresisting awareness that can hold pain without drowning in it. Let's talk language. Phrases such as chasing happiness, seeking fulfillment, or finding peace are grammatical traps. They cast peace as an object, Happiness is prey. Far better to borrow from the East and speak of being peace or embody in joy. In this frame, you don't pursue an external, you express an internal. Happiness becomes a verb, I happy, an activity like playing the piano. One plays, one happies. And just as you wouldn't hoard the sound of the piano after the concert, you wouldn't hoard happiness. You simply play when the impulse arises. There is another layer, impermanence. Every spiritual tradition worthy of the name reminds us that all composite phenomena, thoughts, feelings, mountains, galaxies, arise and pass away. Your unhappiness springs largely from demanding that one particular phenomenon, namely positive emotion, defy this cosmic law. It's like wanting waves to stop waving. Better instead to surf. Allow each crest and trough to carry you in its natural sequence, trusting that the ocean knows what it's doing better than your worried ego. Now you may say, easy for you, Alan. Philosophers get to sit and ponder. I have bills, deadlines, heartbreak. Indeed, but consider, those circumstances are not obstacles to happiness. They are the texture of the tapestry. A jazz musician doesn't lament the dissonant chord. She bends it into the next phrase, making the music richer. Likewise, your setbacks, wrinkles, gray hairs, and overdrafts can become syncopations in the rhythm of your living if you stop labeling them as wrong notes. Let's do a short exercise. Close your eyes. Notice the wash of sensations, weight of the body, breeze against skin, distant sounds. Now shift attention to the space between sensations, the silence behind the noise, the stillness behind the breath. That silence is not something you chase. It's already underlying everything. Realize that, and you realize happiness is not an object at the end of a search, but the basic tone of this silence expressing itself as laughter, tears, colors, heartbreak. When you know this, chasing happiness becomes as absurd as a fish chasing water. At this point, some practical philosophers will demand, all right, what should I do? Very well, do what you love, but love it while you do it, not afterward. If you must chase the sensation of aliveness, not the concept of happiness. And paradoxically, when aliveness is the aim, happiness visits often, because happiness and aliveness are cousins, meeting at family reunions across time. We might summarize thus: chasing happiness makes you miserable because it anchors your awareness in the future, devalues the present, weaponizes desire, and confuses impermanent mood with permanent self-worth. The antidote is not apathy, but presence. To be fully present is to notice that happiness is less a goal than a side effect of relaxed participation in the cosmic joke. And once you're in on the joke, you can laugh whether or not the punchline has arrived. Let me close with a story. A traveler climbed a high mountain to consult a sage famous for dispensing the secret of bliss. After a long, arduous ascent, he found the sage sitting by a crystal lake under a sky of impossible blue. "Master," he panted, "tell me how to be happy." The sage answered, "Take off your shoes and feel the cool mud between your toes." The traveler frowned. "That's all?" The sage chuckled. "That's everything." The traveler tried it. The mud squished, the water lapped, the wind kissed his face. In that trivial sensation of earth and flesh, he discovered a joy that needed no explanation and needed no chase. The sage spoke again. "You walked all this way to receive what has been touching you since the day you were born. So, my friends, before you climb any further, perhaps remove your shoes right where you stand. You are not required to run after the sun. You are living inside its light. The cosmic dance is happening whether or not you know the steps. Relax the toes, loosen the knees, feel the rhythm, and the dance will carry you. And if, in the next moment, sorrow comes to dance instead, welcome it too, as the wind welcomes every bird that rides its currents. In that welcoming is a happiness beyond pursuit, the happiness of being vast enough to contain both sorrow and joy, gain and loss, ebullience and boredom. You, the spacious awareness, are the ballroom itself. Now, before you drift back into the hum of your ordinary habits, let's press a little further. Because the mind is clever, and although it may nod in agreement, it soon creeps back to the chase under subtler disguises. You may say, "Yes, Alan, I see that happiness cannot be hunted like a fox, but surely there's a refined way, perhaps a spiritual way, to secure it." See how the ego rebrands the very habit we have unmasked. Instead of brand name shoes and salary bonuses, it now longs for silent retreats and perfect postures. It swaps designer labels for mantras, 5-year plans for 5-day fasts, ambition for asceticism, still chasing, still measuring, still trying to pin the butterfly on a velvet board. The butterfly dies, the chasing mind prevails. Let me offer you another picture. Imagine a pond on a clear morning. The surface is glass until you toss a pebble. Rings ripple outward, distorting the reflection of the sky, and you gasp, "Oh dear, I've ruined the stillness." But the stillness was never ruined. It merely expressed itself as ripples for a time. Likewise, your mind is fundamentally clear, though thoughts arise like pebbles and troubles ripple across awareness. The anxious one tries frantically to stop all pebbles ever being thrown, an impossible feat, whereas the wise one recognizes that the pond is unthreatened by its own motion. To live is to ripple. To be happy is to recognize that the ripples are still the pond. Now, how does this insight translate into Monday morning at the office or Thursday night in the kitchen with a sink full of dishes? First, abandon the fantasy that some future version of you in a bigger house, with whiter teeth and a calmer mind, will finally earn the right to relax. Instead, turn relaxation into a practice right here. Wash the dish as though it were the only dish in the world. Feel the warm water, the slippery porcelain, the scent of soap. Let dishwashing be its own dance rather than a chore sprinting toward a shining sink. When you grant such undivided attention to seemingly trivial acts, a peculiar grace appears. Joy peaks from the steam, giggling, so you finally noticed. But Alan, you might protest, I have deadlines, children screaming, rent due. Indeed, life is noisy. Yet the secret is not to silence the noise, but to listen so attentively that the noise becomes music. A jazz band amounts to organized noise, and we pay good money to soak in its dissonant glory. We turn next to language again, for language shapes perception. You often say, I am unhappy, as though unhappiness were your name, tattooed on the soul. Better to say unhappiness is arising, like a weather report, cloudy with a chance of tears. In this phrasing, unhappiness is not a self but an event, and you needn't take a passing shower personally. Then you can step aside, open an umbrella of awareness, maybe splash in the puddles. Likewise, when happiness visits, say, happiness is arising, instead of I am happy. This guards against clinging, for weather changes, the sky remains, the sky that is you. Some of you will ask, isn't this just mindfulness? Labels don't matter. What matters is direct seeing. Seeing without interpreting, evaluating, scheming. When you see clearly, life organizes itself, just as a crystal forms flawless geometry from a simple solution left undisturbed. Meditate if you wish, but don't meditate to become happy. Meditate to see what happiness really is, an unforced blooming of present moment intimacy. Remember also that the nervous system craves novelty. When it doesn't find novelty externally, it invents drama internally. That drama masquerades as meaning, but is merely mental gymnastics. To disengage, practice ordinary novelty. Brush your teeth with a non-dominant hand. Take a different route home. Talk to the cashier as if he were an old friend. These micro-adventures remind the brain that wonder is plentiful when attention is fresh. Then happiness sneaks in through the back door, wearing the disguise of everydayness. Now I can almost hear someone muttering, all very zen, Alan, but I like ambition. It drives me. Keep it. Ambition is not an enemy. Attachment to its outcome is. Climb Mount Everest if that stirs your blood, but climb for the crunch of ice under crampons, for the hush of snow-laden dawns, not for the photograph atop summit to brandish at cocktail parties. If the weather turns savage, turn back without shame. The mountain will not gloat. Ambition tempered by humility breeds adventure without despair. Before we part, let's conduct a small ritual. Place your hand on your chest. Feel the beating. Realize you are not making that beat, it happens by itself. A drum in the cathedral of ribs. Now recall something you chased and won, perhaps a medal, a lover, a promotion. Did the heartbeat change into golden chimes? No, the same humble thud persisted. This illustrates the grand punchline. All achievements, all heartbreaks, all fleeting moods arise within the steady miracle of aliveness. The chase obscures that miracle, stopping unveils it. Therefore, live as though happiness were the fragrance of your steps, rather than the destination of your journey. Laugh with the ridges of your fingerprints, weep with the corners of your eyes, eat with the delight of planets colliding in taste buds, and when life disappoints, as it will, let disappointment wash through like rain through open fingers, nourishing hidden seeds. You are not the storm, you are the field that receives it and grows wildflowers afterward. One last story, then I will hush so you may hear the whisper between thoughts. A fisherman lay in his boat, sun warm on eyelids, when a businessman from the city arrived and scolded him. Why lie idle? Cast more nets, sell more fish, and earn more money. Then you can retire early and relax. The fisherman opened one eye, smiled, and replied, What do you think I'm doing now? And he tipped his hat to the gulls cackling overhead. May you too tip your hat to the gulls, those laughing sages, then stroll away from the marketplace of frantic dreams, humming a tune older than commerce. Happiness is already tapping its foot in time. All it asks is that you join the dance, shoes optional, destination irrelevant. So, breathe once more. Notice this inhalation, this exhalation. Here ends the chase, and here begins, indeed continues, the only life you ever needed to live.